Imagine for a second, right, that you are standing in this dimly lit subterranean room. The air is cold. It's scrubbed clean by those heavy industrial filters.
Like a bunker.
Exactly like a bunker. And right in front of you is this massive, heavy steel door, the kind of blast-proof vault you would normally expect to see, guarding gold bullion deep beneath a Federal Reserve.
Right.
But this vault belongs to the United States Department of War. And the person standing next to you, they aren't handing you a bag of cash. They are handing you the keys to a digital server rack. The date stamped on the manifest is May 8th, 2026.
It's a very specific date.
It is. So you turn the key, the server hums to life, and suddenly you are just completely submerged in petabytes of the most closely guarded secrets in human history.
Oh, yeah. It's an ocean of data.
It really is. We are unpacking what is officially known as UFO Release 01. So for everyone listening, there are no blurry secondhand YouTube clips today. We are tearing into a massive, unprecedented, and totally coordinated declassification of documents, mission reports, and frame-by-frame video dissections.
And it is an overwhelming volume of raw data. I mean, truly staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
And what makes this release so critical for you, the listener,
Right.
to understand is that we are not just analyzing, physical objects in the sky. We are looking at a masterclass in the absolute friction between human perception and machine capability.
That friction is so fascinating.
It is. We're going to trace the evolutionary timeline of how the government handles the unknown. And that starts with historical FBI panic, typewritten memos passed around by guys in fedoras, all the way to modern multi-million-dollar infrared drone sensors being pushed to their absolute breaking points.
Right, by anomalies they were simply never programmed to see.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because honestly, the sheer scale of what we are looking at is, well, it's staggering. I've got a stack of notes right here covering over 100 PDFs, dozens of raw military mission reports, and just hours of sensor footage.
It's the ultimate paper trail.
Yeah, it's the unfiltered, unvarnished, bureaucratic, and technological autopsy of the anomalous. We are literally watching the most advanced military apparatus in the world track, categorize, and struggle with things that defy conventional physics.
And the best place to start, really, is the foundation. If we want to understand how a modern targeting pod on, say, an FA-18 Super Hornet misinterprets or captures an anomaly today in 2026, we first have to understand how the human eye and a typewriter tried to capture it 80 years ago.
Right.
Because the phenomenon itself isn't new. It's the aperture through which we are viewing it that has changed.
Yeah, I am looking at this first batch of files, and we're going deep into the history here. These are declassified intelligence cables from LA Faith.
That's the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force.
Right, exactly. And these are dated 1944 and 1945. So this is the absolute bleeding edge of the Second World War. It's the final chaotic push into Germany.
A very tense time.
Oh, incredibly tense. And amidst all the artillery reports and troop movements, you have these bizarre, panicked dispatches from the 415th Night Fighter Squadron. They were flying P-61 Black Widows.
Which is a very specific type of aircraft.
It is. I always found the P-61 fascinating because it wasn't just, a standard prop plane. It was this massive twin-engine beast that was literally designed from the ground up around a radar system.
Right. The technology was cutting edge.
Exactly. These pilots were the vanguard of aerial technology at the time, and they are reporting what they called Foo Fighters.
And the descriptions in those shave cables are incredibly consistent, which is what immediately flags them as significant for an intelligence analyst. The night fighter crews are describing glowing balls of light, pulsating cylindrical objects, and bright orbs that are literally pacing their aircraft.
Pacing them in the dark.
Yes. We have to consider the aerodynamic reality of what they're describing here. The Black Widow was cruising in pitch blackness, and these glowing orbs aren't engaging in dogfights. They aren't shooting flak at them.
Right, they're just hanging out there.
They are matching the speed and altitude of the aircraft perfectly. You read the margins of these reports, and the intelligence officers back at base are just bewildered.
They're trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Precisely. They're asking, is this a new German secret weapon? Is it some experimental psychological warfare tactic involving flares? Or is it a natural atmospheric anomaly, like an extreme form of St. Elmo's fire?
But wait, St. Elmo's fire is a plasma discharge that clings to the skin of the aircraft, right? Like, it doesn't fly 50 yards off the wing in a perfect piecing formation?
No, it absolutely does not. St. Elmo's fire requires a localized electric field. usually around the sharp tips of wings or propellers during a severe storm.
Okay.
It doesn't exhibit independent structured flight kinematics. The analysts back in 1944 knew enough about aviation weather to know this was fundamentally different.
But they didn't have the words for it.
Right. They lacked the vocabulary and the conceptual framework to classify it as anything other than a potential adversarial threat.
Wow. So the war ends, the Axis powers are defeated, but the paperwork surrounding these objects absolutely does not stop. We roll right into the Cold War. And I'm looking at these Air Material Command memos from 1946 and 1947.
Right field documents.
Yeah, this is coming out of Wright Field, which was the beating heart of American aerospace engineering at the time. This is way before Project Blue Book became, just a public relations exercise.
Oh, long before.
The routing slips, the carbon-copied interoffice letters. The military is treating flying discs as a top-tier, grave intelligence concern. They are literally building the bureaucratic scaffolding to track these things.
Well, you have to remember, Wright Field was where foreign technology was reverse engineered.
Right. They were tearing apart captured tech.
Exactly. So when reports of structured, disc-shaped craft performing impossible maneuvers started crossing their desks, their immediate mandate wasn't to look for extraterrestrials.
Oh, of course not.
It was a terrifying, pragmatic question. Did the Soviets get their hands on a German aerospace breakthrough that we missed?
That's the real fear.
The bureaucracy you are looking at is the birth of the modern intelligence triage system. They had to figure out how to filter the noise weather balloons, meteorites, and Venus from the truly anomalous signals that represented a potential catastrophic gap in American airspace defense.
And that paranoia bleeds completely into the domestic side. I have to talk about this massive FBI master file we pulled from the vault.
Yes.
It's labeled 62 HQ 83894. It spans from 1947 to 1968, and it is a monster of a document. I mean, it's hundreds of megabytes of scanned paper, field office memos, newspaper clippings.
It's a goldmine of raw data.
It really is. But Section 2 of this file is what really stopped me in my tracks. It details repeated frantic sightings over the Oak Ridge atomic facility.
And Oak Ridge in the late 1940s was arguably the most sensitive, heavily guarded piece of real estate on the entire planet.
Because of the bomb.
Yes, it was the birthplace of the Manhattan Project's uranium enrichment.
So you have the FBI and the Atomic Energy Commission pulling their hair out because unknown radar-defying objects are hovering over the exact facilities where the United States is building its nuclear arsenal.
The panic makes complete sense.
The geopolitical anxiety practically radiates off the page. And mixed into all of this high-level security panic are these incredibly specific ground-level field interviews.
Which are fascinating to read.
Yeah, there's one from the Detroit field office in November 1957. Two FBI agents sit down with a man named Władysław Krasuski, and he tells them that back in 1944, while he was near a German military compound, he watched a large circular vehicle rise vertically from the ground without any conventional exhaust or wings.
And notice the date of that interview.
November 1957.
Exactly. That is exactly 1 month after the Soviet Union launched Sputnik.
Oh, wow. I didn't even put that together.
Yeah. The United States is in a state of absolute technological shock. So when the Detroit field office interviews a man claiming to have seen a wingless vertical takeoff craft in Germany over a decade earlier, the agents are viewing that testimony through a lens of extreme Cold War vulnerability.
They're terrified.
They aren't wondering about the cosmos. They are wondering about the Kremlin.
It's pure geopolitical projection. Every anomaly is viewed through the filter of whatever terrestrial enemy we are most afraid of at that exact moment.
Precisely.
Which makes this next document completely blow my mind. It's a short, 2-page policy memorandum dated July 18th, 1963.
The Kennedy memo.
Yeah. The header says it's from the National Aeronautics and Space Council Executive Office of the President. We are talking the John F. Kennedy administration. And the text of the memo openly discusses what they call the space alien race question.
In those exact words.
In those exact words. It literally details diplomatic policy, readiness plans, and jurisdictional authority if an alien intelligence is discovered. They were treating the concept of first contact as a real-world, actionable policy issue.
That document reveals a fascinating duality in government thinking.
How so?
Well, while the public-facing stance in 1963 was largely dismissive, treating UFOs as swamp gas or mass hysteria, The internal, high-level policy planners had to account for low-probability, high-impact events.
Right, you don't draft executive-level diplomatic readiness plans for swamp gas.
Exactly. And this serious working assumption wasn't just an American phenomenon. Look at the 1999 Cometa report included in this release.
Right, the French report.
Yes. The Cometa report was authored by highly respected senior French defense officials, military generals, and aerospace engineers.
Heavy hitters.
Absolutely. And after an exhaustive review of decades of military radar tracks and visual encounters, their ultimate conclusion was that defense planners needed to treat the extraterrestrial hypothesis not as fringe science fiction, but as a serious working assumption for national security modeling.
That's a huge shift.
It is. When you have multiple governments, separated by decades, quietly arriving at the same stark conclusion, it demands attention.
Okay, so we have terrestrial defense planners sweating over this, but UFO Release 01 also takes us completely off planet. We have high-resolution archival photographs from the NASA vaults.
The lunar anomalies.
Yeah, I'm looking at the original film scans from the Apollo 12 lunar surface mission in 1969. NASA themselves, not internet sleuths, but actual NASA archivists, have drawn these distinct yellow call-out boxes on the images.
Highlighting specific areas.
Right, magnifying the absolute black void of the lunar sky above the horizon. In one of the boxes, there is a distinct vertical street of pale blue specks.
Very unusual.
And in another, a single, incredibly sharp yellow-orange pinpoint of light that just stands out so clearly against the grain of the film.
And you see, the lunar environment is vital for optical analysis because it eliminates atmospheric variables.
There's no weather?
Right. There were no weather balloons on the moon. There is no atmospheric refraction, no swamp gas, no temperature inversions to create optical mirages.
The clean slate.
The cameras they used were heavily modified Hasselblads shooting on large format film. So when an anomaly appears on the emulsion, you have to rule out cosmic ray strikes, which usually leave chaotic, squiggly tracks as the high-energy particles hit the film.
And the structure of these anomalies is what's so weird. Let's look at Apollo 17 from 1972.
Okay.
There's this wide panoramic shot of the lunar valley. It's desolate, gray, perfect. But in the upper right corner of the sky, magnified by another one of those yellow archivist boxes, are three distinct bluish dots.
And their arrangement is key.
Yeah, they are arranged in a roughly perfect triangle over the landing site. It doesn't look like a chaotic cosmic ray strike at all. It looks like a formation.
That does.
The Department of War is actively investigating this specific cluster as a potential physical object in the scene. And add to that the audio files. December 1965, Gemini 7. We have the actual air-to-ground loop of astronaut Frank Borman calling down to Houston, reporting a bogey in orbit with them.
It's remarkable audio.
You listen to the tape, and his voice is entirely calm, professional, but he is fundamentally describing an unknown object sharing their orbital trajectory.
And Houston's response is equally professional. They immediately attempt to track it on radar. It's the normalization of the anomaly in real time.
I hear all of this, and I look at this timeline. We've got World War II night fighters in 1944, FBI panic in the 50s, astronauts in the 60s, French generals in the 90s.
Long history.
Right, but it feels like finding your great-grandfather's diary and realizing he had the exact same anxieties about the dark that you do. So I have to ask, are we looking at an unbroken chain of the exact same physical phenomenon flying in our skies, or are we just looking at an unbroken chain of human psychology?
That's the core question.
Just the same human reaction to the unknown, just dressed up in different eras.
It is the ultimate anthropological question regarding this data. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most valuable takeaway from this historical baseline isn't actually about proving whether the Foo Fighters were the exact same craft as the Apollo anomalies.
No.
No. The real value is in observing the institutional response.
I see.
For decades, the most highly trained observers humanity has ever produced, combat pilots, astronauts, radar technicians, have been encountering things they fundamentally cannot explain. And the government's response, universally, has been to build a bigger, more classified filing cabinet.
Just throw more paperwork at it.
Exactly. The phenomenon is incredibly persistent. What changes is our methodology for capturing it. We are moving from the carbon paper and typewriters of the mid-20th century into the digital petabyte-scale databases of the modern military.
Okay, so if the paperwork evolved, but the mystery remained, we need to understand how this is tracked today. Let's dig into the modern bureaucracy of the unknown.
It's quite a shift.
I have a whole folder here of modern reporting formats. How does a 21st century fighter pilot or a drone operator actually report a UAP? Because they aren't mailing letters to the FBI anymore.
No, they aren't. Today, the entire process revolves around a database architecture known as the IMAS rep, or mission report.
Okay.
It is a highly standardized, rigid military reporting form used across all combatant commands, Central Command, Africa Command, Indo-Pacific Command. Whenever a sortie lands or a drone shift ends, the operators fill out these forms to record the quantitative circumstances of the operation.
Right. They plug in the GPS grids, the ordnance dropped, the fuel
Hitting your
consumed.
numbers.
But buried inside this rigid database structure is a specific text field. I'm looking at it here. It's called the gen text section.
Short for general text.
Yeah.
And the gen text is where the human element survives inside the military machine. When an operator tracks an anomaly, the altitude and velocity go into the spreadsheet columns, but the gen text is the blank canvas where the human operator has to subjectively type out, in their own words, what their brain just processed.
It's their narrative.
It is qualitative data. And analyzing these narratives is fascinating because you are reading the real-time cognitive struggle of highly trained individuals searching for a vocabulary that literally doesn't exist in their training manuals.
I found a perfect example of that struggle. There is a May 2022 report out of Iraq. A drone operator is flying a standard ISR loop intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, just burning hours in the sky, sucking up data.
Routine stuff.
Totally routine. And in the gen text, the operator types that they observed 5 distinct objects fly rapidly across their screen. They describe one of the objects as a possible missile and the other 4 as possible birds.
And that phrasing is incredibly revealing.
It's wild. You have a drone operator sitting in a control station looking through a multi-million-dollar optical sensor suite, and they are essentially shrugging their shoulders.
Just guessing, really.
Yeah. They are telling their commanding officer, well, one of those blips might be a supersonic weapon of war coming to kill someone, and the other 4 might just be a flock of pigeons. It perfectly highlights the ambiguity of a two-dimensional screen.
It highlights the extreme limitations of interpreting visual contrast without depth perception.
Right.
Another vital example in the release is the May 2020 Range Fowler report.
What's a range fowler?
Well, for context, a range fowler is naval aviation terminology for a safety of flight issue, usually an unauthorized intrusion into a restricted military training airspace. In this specific incident, a Navy pilot operating over the Persian Gulf tracks a solid white object. In the gen text narrative, the pilot explicitly notes that the object is making erratic movements over the water.
Erratic in what way?
Well, the pilot attempts to get a weapons system lock. They cycle the magnification zoom 4 times to get a better look, and the sensor simply breaks track because the movement is too physically unpredictable for the software to anticipate.
Wow. When we read these narratives, we naturally want to see the video that goes with them. We want to see what the pilot saw.
Of course.
And this brings us to one of the most frustrating aspects of UFO Release 1, the redaction reality.
Is a massive hurdle.
Included in the vault are 8 photos submitted by the FBI in late 2025. They're designated A1 through A8, and looking at them is an exercise in pure madness.
Walk us through the visual composition of image A1.
Okay, so you're looking at this grainy, monochrome score. The background has this faint, noisy texture. It could be a cloud layer, or it could be rolling, arid desert terrain. There is 0 depth of field to tell you which.
Very ambiguous.
Dead center on the screen is a digital white crosshair. And just off to the side of the crosshair is a tiny, dark speck. That speck is the purported UAP. But your eye isn't drawn to the speck.
No, it's drawn to the redactions.
Your eye is drawn to these massive, aggressive, solid black rectangular blocks that look like they were slapped onto the image. They tile the entire perimeter of the frame.
Those are the redaction bars placed by military sensors before the data was transferred to the vault.
They cover everything, the top edge, the side margins, the bottom corners, and they do this exact same tiling on the modern video clips too. They're deliberately hiding the HUD, the heads-up display telemetry.
Yes, all the hard data.
Because of these black bars, we are completely blind. We can't see the altitude readout. We can't see the true airspeed. We don't know the pitch and roll of the aircraft. We don't know the GPS coordinates. And we don't even know what specific sensor mode the camera's operating in.
It's all stripped away.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Watching these declassified videos is like trying to watch a football game through a narrow straw while someone stands next to you and covers the stadium scoreboard, the game clock, and the down marker with black tape.
That's a great way to put it.
You know something on the field is moving, but you have zero context. You don't know how fast the players are running, what quarter it is, or if the field is even 100 yards long. It strips the movement of all meaning.
For a civilian analyst trying to perform kinematic analysis, it is indeed maddening. But we have to understand the operational security logic behind that black tape.
Why do they do it?
The military sensors are not redacting the images to hide the shape of the UFO from the public. They are redacting the edges of the screen to protect their own classified sensor capabilities from near-peer adversary.
Protect the camera, not the anomaly.
Exactly. The telemetry numbers on that HUD represent the crown jewels of American electronic warfare. If a foreign intelligence agency sees the exact slant range, the thermal sensitivity threshold, the gimbal limits, and the focal length of the zoom, they can reverse engineer exactly how well and from how far away our jets can see their stealth aircraft.
Oh, I see.
If they know the limits of our eyes, they know how to hide from us. So the redaction is a blunt force instrument to protect the platform.
Okay, I understand the national security physics of it. You don't want China or Russia knowing the exact specs of an ATFLIR pod. But it leaves us, the analysts of this vault, in a brutal spot.
It does.
If we are looking through a straw with all the numbers blacked out, how do we know what we are looking at is a real physical craft bending the laws of aerodynamics and not just a digital glitch in the multi-million-dollar camera?
That is the core challenge. We are stepping into the analyst's dilemma. We have to separate sensor artifacts from physical objects because these modern targeting pods, the forward-looking infrared, the electro-optical sensors, they were incredibly complex, delicate optical instruments.
Highly sensitive.
And by their very design, they introduce their own optical physics and digital hallucinations into the video feed.
I have a video here that perfectly illustrates that hallucination. It's from the Middle East in 2013. It's the oldest digital video in the release, tagged WWII PR38.
The diffraction star.
Yes. The camera zooms in on a distant target, and suddenly you see this highly unusual, dark, 8-pointed star shape contrasting against a light gray sky. And the star is incredibly specific. The arms alternate in length, a long spike, then a short spike, then a long spike.
Very geometric.
And trailing diagonally behind this star is a thin, dark contrail. When I first pulled up this file, I thought, wow, we finally have it, an advanced spacecraft shaped like a literal geometric star. But I showed you the file and you immediately started talking about telescopes.
Because what you are looking at in video PR38 is almost certainly an illusion created by the physical architecture of the camera lens. The 8-pointed shape is not the structural hull of an alien spacecraft. It perfectly matches the physics of optical diffraction spikes.
Explain how that works, because to the untrained eye, it looks totally solid.
Think about throwing a rock into a completely still pond. The ripples spread outward in perfect concentric circles. But if you drive 4 wooden posts into the water near the splash, those ripples are going to crash into the posts.
Right, they break up.
The waves will split, bend around the wood, and create interfering overlapping patterns on the surface. Light acts the exact same way.
Oh, interesting.
If you ever look through a large Cassegrain reflecting telescope, you know there is a secondary mirror suspended in the middle of the tube. That mirror is held in place by physical metal struts called spider vanes.
Okay, I can picture that.
When the light from an incredibly bright distant star enters the telescope, the light waves crash into those metal struts. The light bends, splits, and bleeds outward along the geometry of the struts, painting a perfect spiky star on the image sensor.
So the camera's creating the shape out of light waves.
Yes. The same optical physics applies to these military targeting pods. When the sensor attempts to process an incredibly hot, incredibly small point source of light, like the exhaust nozzle of a distant jet engine or an intensely burning magnesium flare, the internal optics and struts within the pod cause the light to diffract.
And that makes the pattern?
The camera software tries to render it, and it creates that alternating 8-pointed diffraction pattern. The star shape is an optical artifact. The actual physical object is likely just a microscopic, extremely hot point at the very center of those spikes.
Wow. So the physical glass and metal of the lens can create an illusion. But what about when the camera software invents something out of thin air? I am looking at the October 2024 Syria full motion video, PR33.
The Syria video.
The drone is looking straight down at a rural compound. You can see the dirt courtyards, the roof of a building. And sitting perfectly over the right side of the building is this semi-transparent, irregularly shaped, bright orange blob.
It looks very strange.
It looks like a glowing cloud hovering over the roof.
And what is the telltale kinematic sign in that video that proves it isn't a physical cloud?
It's the movement, or rather the lack of movement. As the drone flies, the camera shifts slightly, the angle of the building changes, the walls wobble as the perspective shifts, but that orange blob stays pixel perfectly fixed to the glass of the screen.
Exactly.
It doesn't shift with the background terrain. It's completely translucent. It is overwhelmingly obvious that it's a digital overlay. It might be a thermal tracking chip layered onto the visual feed by the targeting software or some kind of UI glitch, but it is definitely not a physical, glowing orange entity hovering in Syrian airspace.
You always have to separate the digital user interface from the physical reality on the ground. The interface can lie to you. We see a different, more subtle variation of this software deception in the 2020 Air Force video, PR-45.
Oh, that one.
This system uses a completely different HUD architecture. It has a magenta oval for searching, a red ellipse that denotes a target lock, and a thick green border framing the screen.
That video is deeply unsettling to watch. The object inside the red tracking ellipse starts out as this tiny, dimensionless, dark speck.
Yes.
But as the video progresses, the object seems to physically grow. It expands into this elongated, asymmetrical gray blob. You can even start to see internal architecture, darker cells, or structural spots inside the gray mass.
It looks organic.
It looks exactly like an organic thing, shape-shifting or inflating in midair.
It looks that way, but we have to consult the ARO analyst comment attached to the file in the vault.
ARO being the Anomaly Office.
Right, the Pentagon's Anomaly Resolution Office. They explicitly note that this apparent growth in size is a mechanical illusion. The military aircraft filming the object is simply flying very fast, directly toward the target. It's closing the distance.
So it's just getting closer to the camera.
Exactly. As the jet rapidly closes the distance, the thermal signature of the target takes up more and more physical pixels on the sensor array. When a hot object hits an infrared sensor, the heat can bloom or bleed into adjacent pixels.
Oh, so it blurs.
Yes, and as it gets closer, the sub-pixel rendering algorithm tries to sharpen the edges, creating those artificial internal cells you noticed. The object isn't shape-shifting or morphing. It is a static shape getting near, and the software is struggling to paint it cleanly.
That makes total sense.
It is a textbook example of why you cannot take a two-dimensional screen representation at face value without understanding the kinematics of the camera itself.
I am looking at my notes here, and I'm realizing we have spent the last 15 minutes completely deconstructing the military's best hardware. If the physical lenses are creating 8-pointed stars through optical diffraction, and the software is projecting translucent orange blobs onto the screen, and simple forward motion makes static objects look like they are biologically morphing, well, I have to ask the obvious question.
Go ahead.
How much of this unprecedented historic UFO vault is just the Department of War meticulously cataloging its own camera glitches? Are we just looking at billions of dollars of technology getting confused by its own shadow?
This raises an important question, and it is the exact agonizing question that defense analysts grapple with every single day in classified vaults. How much of this data is optical noise and how much is a physical signal?
How do they even know?
How do you prove an object exists independently of the camera? This release actually provides the gold standard for proving physical reality. We look for a concept called multimodality.
Explain how multimodality works in the field.
Multimodality means capturing the exact same anomaly on more than one type of physical sensor at the exact same time. Think of it like looking at a crime scene. If you shine a standard flashlight, you see the furniture.
Right.
But if you switch to an ultraviolet black light, you suddenly see biological evidence that was completely invisible to the naked eye. The physical reality of the room didn't change. The wavelength of light you were using to perceive it did.
And we see that perfectly in the January 2024 encounter over Greece, video PR-28. I have the timeline pulled up.
It's a great example.
The video starts as a split-screen presentation. On the right side of your screen, you have standard electro-optical video, basically a high-end normal television camera capturing the visible light spectrum. On the left side of the screen, you have SWIRE.
Shortwave infrared.
What makes SWIRE different?
It is a highly specialized sensor band. Unlike thermal cameras that detect radiated heat, SWIRE detects reflected light in wavelengths just beyond what the human eye can see. It is exceptional at seeing through atmospheric haze and smoke.
Okay, so on the right side, the normal camera is staring at nothing. It's just empty clouds and ocean. There's absolutely nothing there. But on the left side, the SWIR camera is tracking a distinct, bright, solid target moving against the sky.
The operator realizes this discrepancy. They take the SWIR feed full screen so we can see the object clearly. But then, at the 56-second mark, the operator performs the most crucial action in the entire vault.
They flick the switch.
They intentionally toggle the camera hardware back to the visible light spectrum.
And the object completely vanishes.
Then they toggle to a mode called black hot SWIR, which inverts the thermal contrast, and they still cannot reacquire a clear track.
So what does that prove?
When an operator actively cycles through physical camera modes, and the anomaly is only visible in one specific, highly narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum, it proves something profound. A physical scratch on the glass lens, or a software glitch in the UI, would persist across every single camera mode.
Because the scratch is physically on the glass.
Exactly. The fact that the object disappears and reappears based on the wavelength proves it has a highly specific, highly unusual thermal or light-reflective signature. It proves the object is a physical reality in the airspace, not camera noise.
That is absolutely fascinating. So the black light analogy really holds up. We use multimodality, kinematic data, and an understanding of optical diffraction to filter out the lens flares, the software ghosts, and the blooming pixels.
We scrub the data clean.
But once we scrub all of that away, what remains? I'm looking at the next set of files. We are left with objects that possess highly specific manufactured shapes and behaviors that defy any conventional aerospace explanation.
We enter the menagerie of shapes and kinematics. When you strip away the artifacts, you are left with data that challenges our understanding of aerodynamics.
Let's start with the shapes, because some of these are incredibly specific. I want you to explain the Indo-Pakistan football to me.
Video PR46.
Yeah, this is recorded in 2024 by the Indo-Pacific Command. The camera is zoomed in tight against a pale, featureless gray sky. Sitting dead center in the targeting crosshairs is a dark, solid object, and it is shaped exactly like American football.
A very distinct ellipse.
But what makes it so bizarre is that it has three distinct, rigid radial spikes projecting out of its hull. One spike points straight up toward the top of the frame, and the other two point downward at precise 45-degree angles.
Almost like a tripod.
Exactly. And as the 20-second video plays, it holds this exact, rigid structural geometry on the screen. It doesn't wobble like a balloon. It doesn't shift like a plasma. It looks like a heavy, manufactured piece of hardware.
Aerodynamically, that shape is a nightmare. A football with radial spikes generates immense drag and lacks any conventional lifting surfaces like wings or rotors.
Right, it shouldn't fly.
What is critical about PR46 is that it is the most morphologically resolved object in the entire release. The edges are sharp. It maintains that complex, non-aerodynamic geometry throughout the observation.
Which means what?
That structural rigidity effectively rules out a vast majority of natural atmospheric phenomena, like ball lightning or ionized gas, which tend to be amorphous and unstable.
Wow. Then you have the teardrop. This is from June 2024, captured over the Gulf of Oman, video PR29. The infrared sensor shows a bright, incredibly hot object shaped like an inverted teardrop, a perfectly round, bulbous head at the top, tapering smoothly to a sharp point at the bottom.
The very clean shape.
And trailing straight down from that sharp point is a perfectly vertical, straight pole or bar. It looks like a plumb bob, and it's flying low over sunlit ocean water.
With the teardrop video, we have to apply rigorous skepticism even to structured shapes. If you read the NLSREP analyst's notes attached to the file, they explicitly state that the flight path of this object was tracking directly along the water's glint band.
What exactly is a glint band?
The glint band is the specific area on the surface of the ocean that is directly reflecting the sun's glare back into the camera lens. It is intensely bright, both visually and thermally. The defense analysts suggest that the vertical pole trailing beneath the teardrop might not be a physical part of the craft at all.
Wait, really?
Yes. It could actually be an optical reflection of the incredibly hot object itself, reflecting off the ocean's surface directly below it and bleeding into the sensor's pixels. It is a vital reminder that the environment can alter the perceived shape of even a genuinely anomalous object.
Fair enough, the water reflection could create the pole, but then I pull up the MICE-REP from the Mediterranean Sea, document D54. The operator in this report doesn't describe a blob or a teardrop or an optical illusion.
No, they're very clear.
The Gentex explicitly logs a, quote, triangular and metallic UAP, and they have hard radar data to back it up. This massive metallic triangle is flying at roughly 25,000 feet, cruising steadily at 168 knots, which is about 193 miles per hour. That is a structured, physical, heavy craft operating casually in controlled military airspace.
And beyond the sheer shapes of these craft, we have to examine their kinematics, the physical behaviors and movements. Because frequently, the way these objects manipulate gravity and inertia is far more anomalous than their physical geometry.
Which brings us to the flawless formation. This is 2023 Indo-Pacific Command Video PR-47. The HUD overlay shows a dark teal cross, and sitting just millimeters above the red target lock ring are three distinct, incredibly bright objects.
Moving together.
And for 2 solid minutes, as the camera pans, tracking across the sky, these 3 separate objects hold a perfect, millimeter-precise horizontal line. They do not drift. They do not wobble in the wind.
What is fascinating here is the sheer statistical improbability of that kinematic behavior. In fluid dynamics and aerodynamics, maintaining that kind of perfect, rigid, angular separation between 3 independent free-flying objects over a 2-minute observation is staggeringly difficult.
Because of the wind.
Think about the micro-adjustments required to fight wind shear. It suggests a few possibilities. 1, it is a tightly linked, highly advanced autonomous drone swarm communicating in microseconds.
Okay, that's possible.
2, we are actually looking at a single, massive, rigid physical object, but the hull is invisible or camouflaged, and we are only seeing 3 thermal exhaust ports, or hotspots, on its surface.
That is a wild thought.
Or 3, we must always leave the door open for a deeply complex sensor artifact duplicated across the lens. But if those are 3 physical craft, the flight control algorithm running them is generations ahead of ours.
And these coordinated kinematics happen in total darkness, too. Look at the 2026 Army video, PR-49. It is the only true pitch-black nighttime capture in the entire vault.
Night vision footage.
The screen is essentially dark noise, but you clearly see this tightly paired binary set of bright pinpoints. 2 distinct dots flying together through the absolute dark, holding their relative position locked in space as the sensor zooms in and out, trying to get a read on them.
The control is impressive, but the truly anomalous kinematics, the movements that completely break our understanding of physics, are found in the agency reports from October 2023, documents D33 and D35.
Yes. The 90-degree turns. The Gentex narrative records that an aircrew spots a circular UAP flying just bare feet above the choppy surface of the ocean.
Very low altitude.
The object is traveling at an estimated 80 miles per hour. And without slowing down, without banking its wings like an airplane, without any wide turning radius, it executes multiple instantaneous 90-degree turns. It's moving like the cursor on a computer screen.
An instantaneous 90-degree turn at 80 miles per hour generates catastrophic G-forces. If that object has mass, inertia dictates it should tear itself apart, or at least skid through the turn.
But it doesn't.
No. A movement profile of straight lines and sharp right angles implies a means of propulsion and aerodynamic control that completely ignores inertia, gravity, and traditional lift surfaces.
Reading the numbers in the report is one thing, but watching the operators actually try to track these things is agonizing. It is so stressful to watch the footage.
It's very erratic.
Trying to keep a multi-million-dollar targeting pod locked onto one of these objects is like trying to keep a laser pointer perfectly steady on a frantic, buzzing housefly while you are strapped into a roller coaster. The object is just moving too erratically.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanical limitations of the tracking mounts. I want to guide you through the 2023 Greece video, PR-34, because it is the ultimate visceral documentation of the human struggle behind the joystick.
Tell me about it.
The video starts, and the sensor operator spots a tiny anomaly. They pan the massive gimbal of the camera to get the object centered. You can almost feel the physical tension in the movements. They manage to drop a cyan track box onto the target. The computer system is attempting to build a thermal contrast lock.
But the object is so small and the background temperature of the sky is so similar, the lock just won't hold.
Right. The computer is confused, so the operator frantically engages a contrast filter. The screen suddenly goes darker. A thick vignette ring appears around the edges. They're manually trying to force the software to see the thermal difference by manipulating the gain.
Pushing the system to the limit.
But it fails. The reticle drops the track box. It reverts to a plain passive crosshair. And for the last 30 agonizing seconds of the video, you just watch the sensor wildly cycling through magnification zoom levels and brightness thresholds, panning back and forth, desperately trying to reacquire a target that has simply vanished into the ether.
It's just a ghost.
It is a real-time recording of our absolute best technology failing completely.
And that technological failure brings us to the final and arguably most important theme of this vault: ground truth and human intervention. Because as we have seen, staring at abstract video footage of white dots flying against gray clouds or black blobs floating against white skies is incredibly dangerous.
It strips away all reference.
We desperately need context. We need something to anchor these floating anomalies to the real physical world, and we need the human brain to guide the machine.
Context is the bedrock of all intelligence analysis. A bright dot against a completely empty sky tells you absolutely nothing. Without a background reference, you cannot determine its physical size, its distance from the camera, or its true velocity.
Which is exactly why the 2024 Indopacon video, PR48, might be the single most illuminating piece of footage in the entire release.
The wind farm video.
The video starts off looking like every other frustrating clip. It's a featureless, flat gray field of view. There is a magenta targeting crosshair dead center, and it's tracking a small, incredibly bright pinpoint of light. If you pause it there, you assume the camera is pointed straight up at the stratosphere, tracking something at 40,000 feet. But then, right at the 43-second mark, the operator pulls back on the stick, the sensor zooms out.
And the physical background reveals itself.
It completely reframes reality. As the camera zooms out, it reveals a massive, sprawling offshore wind farm. Suddenly, the gray background isn't the sky, it's the ocean. You see the towering vertical pylons, the huge three-blade rotors slowly spinning silhouetted against the water.
It changes everything.
And that bright pinpoint UAP they are tracking, it isn't at 40,000 feet. It is flying right near the bases of these massive turbines.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of analysis, this is why establishing ground truth is non-negotiable. The moment that wind farm appears in the frame, it provides immense, undeniable scale.
We know how big a turbine is.
Right. It provides a terrestrial anchor that allows analysts to calculate distance and speed using the known height of the turbines. But most importantly, it provides a mundane, terrestrial alternative hypothesis.
What do you mean?
Before the zoom, the dot could be an advanced alien craft. After the zoom, because we know it is navigating a wind farm, we have to ask, is this bright dot actually a commercial quadcopter drone inspecting a turbine blade for microfractures? Is it the thermal reflection of a marine navigation light bouncing off the water?
Oh, wow.
Ground truth changes the entire calculus of the investigation. It grounds the phenomenon, literally.
It anchors the data. But even when we have ground truth, even with all these sensors, we still completely rely on the human operator to make the initial judgment call. The machine doesn't know it's looking at an anomaly. And nothing illustrates that dynamic better than the 2020 Middle East video PR40.
The annotated video file.
Yes. You have this high-tech, multi-million-dollar targeting pod filming a dot moving smoothly over a layer of clouds. It's beautiful, high-resolution footage. But about 10 seconds into the video, the playback suddenly freezes. The original military reporter, the actual guy sitting in a dark, air-conditioned trailer somewhere in Nevada operating the drone thousands of miles away, literally paused his screen, pulled up a crude digital drawing tool on his interface, and hand-drew a wobbly MS Paint-style white circle around the dot.
So drew it right on the screen.
And then, using his keyboard, he typed in big, blocky white letters, drawing a line pointing to his circle. UI small thermal signature. Unidentified small thermal signature.
What is remarkable is that ARO, the Pentagon's highest-level anomaly resolution office, left that crude annotation completely untouched when they cleared the video for this release. It is preserved exactly as the enlisted operator drew it in the heat of the moment.
So what does this all mean for us? We have the most heavily funded, technologically advanced military apparatus on the face of the Earth. We are drowning in petabytes of digital data armed with artificial intelligence, wire sensors, and radar arrays.
An unbelievable amount of tech.
But at the end of the day, it still takes a human being sitting in a chair, drawing a literal wobbly circle on a screen to say to the entire chain of command, hey, look at this doesn't belong here.
It means that machines, regardless of how complex their algorithms become, only see what they are explicitly programmed to see. An AI targeting system is programmed to instantly recognize the specific thermal exhaust signature of a Russian MiG or the radar cross-section of a Chinese cruise missile.
Right, it knows its enemies.
It is not programmed to recognize an 8-pointed optical diffraction star, or a football covered in radial spikes, or an orb matching pace with a World War II bomber. The human in the loop, the pilot with their eyes looking out of the canopy, or the sensor operator squinting at a glowing monitor, is still the ultimate, irreplaceable arbiter of what is truly anomalous. The machine merely records the data. The human mind perceives the mystery.
Okay, let's bring it all home. We have covered an unbelievable amount of ground today on this deep dive into the vault. We traced the phenomenon from the handwritten A-Shafe reports of Foo Fighters pacing Black Widows in the dark skies of World War II, through the intense Cold War anxieties of the FBI and the nuclear facilities, all the way up to the Apollo lunar anomalies.
A very long timeline.
We've seen how the bureaucracy evolved from carbon copy typewriters to digital misrep databases. We've wrestled with the intense, maddening secrecy of modern redactions and HUD tape, and we've explored the absolute physical limits of our best optical technology, separating diffraction spikes from physics-defying 90-degree turns.
We have seen that the phenomenon is enduring and persistent, but our ability to accurately capture and categorize it is still fundamentally flawed by our own technological blind spots and our obsession with operational security.
But before we lock the vault and let you go, I want to leave you with one final, highly provocative thought. It's something to chew on that wasn't explicitly written in any of these declassified PDFs, but it is the terrifying, logical endpoint of everything we've unpacked today.
I'm intrigued.
We have spent this entire deep dive examining how humans and optical sensors perceive these anomalies. But consider the trajectory of modern warfare. Military technology is racing toward total automation. Our artificial intelligence and automated tracking systems are getting infinitely faster at filtering out visual noise so they can instantly lock onto known, pre-programmed enemy aircraft profiles.
The entire goal of next-generation defense software is to aggressively eliminate the irrelevant to instantly find the terrestrial threat.
Exactly. So as these algorithms become completely ruthlessly efficient at filtering out absolutely anything that isn't a known missile, a known drone, or a known jet, are we unintentionally programming our future sensors to automatically delete the truly anomalous?
That is a chilling thought.
If a UAP performs a 90-degree turn that defies physics, and it doesn't fit the AI's pre-programmed definition of an aerodynamic threat, will the next generation of cameras even let the pilot see it? Or will it be erased from the screen as background software noise before the human operator ever gets a chance to draw a wobbly white circle around it? Are we building the ultimate perfect digital vault only to completely lock ourselves out of seeing the universe as it actually is?
That is a highly plausible and deeply concerning technological blind spot. We may